If you had to choose between honor and love, which would you choose? It's a cruel question, isn't it? The kind that splits a man clean down the middle, makes you sit up at night with the weight of memory pressing on your chest like a branding iron. I still remember the first time I saw her, Eleanor Whitlock, the rancher's daughter. Too fine for the likes of us, they'd say. Too proper, too polished. But the desert doesn't care for manners or last names. It strips a person down to what's real. And out there, in the painted stillness of the canyon, she became something else entirely. Something wild, something free. She had a habit of slipping away from that big white house on the hill, skirts hitched up, boots mudded, paintbrushes poking out of her satchel like weapons of rebellion. Said she was looking for color in a world too full of dust and rules. And the canyon, well, it gave her both. Color and silence. A kind of sacred solitude. She used to sit on that ledge, sunlight painting fire in her auburn hair, brushing the cliffs into her little sketchbook like she was trying to trap time itself. That's where I saw her. That's where everything began. My name's Kai. I was born in that canyon, Apache by blood, tracker by trade, ghost by necessity. The war had taken too many of ours, and the treaties, just paper lies carried on the wind. I didn't trust the white folks, not even the ones who smiled with their teeth and offered handshakes with the same fingers that pulled triggers. But her? She didn't smile like them. She didn't look at me like I was a danger or a curiosity. She just looked, and I looked back. We didn't speak that first time. Just stared across the red rock divide like two spirits caught in the same dream. But she came back, day after day, always alone, always watching the way the sun melted into the cliffs like blood into water. And I kept my distance. Until one day she dropped her brush, and it rolled down near where I was hiding. She saw me then, fully, and still she didn't run. "Do you live here?" she asked, voice soft, uncertain. "No one lives here," I said. "We only survive." Her eyes didn't flinch. Not like most. Then maybe we're both trespassers. There was a loneliness in her voice I recognized. A sadness you couldn't dress up in lace and pearls. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a shadow. We met in secret after that. Not every day. Just enough to feed something dangerous. She told me about her father, Sheriff Whitlock. About the man he used to be before power hardened him, like the sun hardens bone. About how he didn't want her painting. Said it was a waste of time for a woman. Said beauty didn't matter in a place like this. But she believed otherwise. And somehow she made me believe it too. She painted me once. Said she wanted to remember the way I stood when I thought no one was watching. I told her that was dangerous. That if her father found out, he wouldn't just come for me. He'd burn the whole canyon to ash. She just smiled. Then let's not let him find out. But secrets have weight. And the longer you carry them, the deeper they press into your spine. I started hearing whispers in town, that someone had seen footprints in the canyon, that the sheriff was setting traps, tightening his patrols. Folks didn't trust the land anymore, they said. Said it was crawling with ghosts of the past. And maybe it was. Maybe we were the ghosts. Caught between the old world and the new, between duty and desire. Every time I held her hand, I knew it might be the last. Every time she kissed me, I tasted the edge of a knife. And still, we met. Because some loves aren't written in ink. They're carved into the stone, whispered into the wind, cursed from the moment they're born. If I could go back, if I could tell her anything, it would be this: you were worth the ruin. But back then, All I could do was watch as the storm built itself in silence, gathering in the hills, waiting to come down. And we just kept falling. If the world tells you who you're allowed to love, do you obey or do you fight it? I ask myself that sometimes, staring into the dying embers of a campfire, alone beneath a sky too wide for dreams. And each time, the answer cuts the same. I fought. And I paid for it. Eleanor and I. We never spoke about the future. Not because we didn't want one, but because in our hearts we knew the land didn't grant futures to people like us. It gave us moments, precious, fleeting moments, stitched together in the stillness between fear and longing. There was a place deeper in the canyon we called the Hollow. A small spring fed it, and wildflowers dared bloom there even in the driest summers. The stones were smooth, and the air was cool. We'd lie side by side on the flat rocks, barely touching, whispering stories like children hiding from the world. She told me about her mother, how she died when Eleanor was only 10, how her father hardened after that, carving himself into the law like a man chiseled from stone. Said he used to read poetry to her once. Said now he only read warrants. I told her about my brother, Taza, how we hunted together, fought together, and how I buried him with my own hands after a cavalry raid near Fort Sumner. I told her I hadn't spoken a word to another soul in months, before she came into my life like rain in a drought. She cried when I told her that, but she didn't turn away. She held my face in her hands, soft and trembling. "You deserve more than this silence," she whispered, and I believed her. God help me, I believed her. Still, I knew we were living on borrowed time. Her father's reach was long, and his pride ran deeper than any canyon. The sheriff didn't forgive, didn't forget. And if he ever caught wind of who she was meeting in the desert, who she was loving, there wouldn't be a trial. There'd be a noose, or worse. I tried to pull away once, told her it was too dangerous, that her life had too much promise to throw away on a man like me. She just laughed, soft, sad, stubborn. "My life is not a promise, Kai," she said. "It's a prison. You're the only thing that makes me feel like I've got a key. But love doesn't erase danger. It just makes you willing to walk into it with your eyes wide open." One night, she brought me a scarf, said she'd sewn it herself, brown and blue, colors of the earth and sky. "So you won't forget me," she said, tying it around my wrist. Her fingers lingered. Her eyes held mine like a prayer. I didn't have anything to give her but a necklace my mother made. Simple beads, carved from bone and cedar, strung on a leather cord. It was all I had left from the days before the war. I slid it over her head. "You sure?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "It's not mine anymore," I said. "It's yours. You wear it, you carry all of me." She smiled then, a real smile, the kind that could light up the dark places inside a man. That night, I held her for the first time. Not with the desperation of a stolen moment, but with the aching tenderness of someone who knows that love, real love, is a choice you make even when it hurts, even when it's doomed. I remember the way her breath caught in her throat, the way her fingers trembled against my skin. There was no fear between us, only the silence of the canyon and the beating of two hearts too wild to be caged. But the world has a cruel way of punishing what it doesn't understand. And love like ours, it was never meant to stay hidden for long. Sometimes I wonder if I'd walked away right then, if I'd turned my back on her and the fire she lit in me, would I have saved us both? Or would I have lost something far worse? Because once you've touched a love like that, the kind that breaks every rule, nothing else ever feels real again. If you knew the cost of love, would you still dare to love? Some nights, I still hear the wind weaving through the canyon walls. It hums low, like it remembers us, like it mourns what we became. There was a time I thought maybe the rocks themselves were holding our secrets, our kisses, our whispered names, our trembling hands reaching in the dark. I thought maybe the canyon would protect us. I was wrong. Word travels in towns like ours, not on voices, but on stares, on glances held a second too long, on a boot print found where no boot should be. And I had left a trace. I'd grown careless, or maybe just bold. That's the thing about forbidden love. It makes you believe you're invincible, even while it sharpens the knife behind your back. It was the morning of the Fall Harvest Festival when I felt the shift. I rode into town under the cover of trade, same as I always had. Dismounted near the stables, kept my eyes low, my face wrapped tight in a bandana. But something in the air. It felt colder, still. Men weren't laughing. Children weren't running through the dust with sticky hands and ribbons. It was as if the whole place had sucked in its breath and forgot how to exhale. And then I saw him, Sheriff Whitlock. He stood on the porch of the jailhouse, arms crossed, revolver resting easy at his hip, eyes locked on the canyon in the distance like it owed him a debt. His jaw was tight. His hands were still. And Eleanor, she was nowhere. I left town with my heart hammering against my ribs like a war drum. That night, I returned to the hollow, hoping she'd be there waiting. But the spring was still. The stones cold. No scent of her perfume, no notebook tucked beneath the cedar roots. Just silence. Heavy. Dreadful. And then I saw it. A small piece of paper pinned to the tree we used to sit beneath. My name written in her hand. They know. No other words, no signature, just those two. And I swear, the canyon held its breath with me as I read them again and again, trying to believe it wasn't true. But I knew. They'd found out. I spent that night with my knife in my hand and my back to the cliff wall, every shadow a threat. My thoughts kept drifting to her. Was she safe? Was she locked away, beaten, dragged back to that white house like a prisoner? And what would I do now? Run? Stay? Fight? If I fled, she'd suffer alone. If I stayed, I might never leave this place alive. That's the thing about honor. It's easy to talk about when you've got nothing to lose. But when your heart lives in another person's chest, when your soul is tied to someone who would burn the world for you, honor becomes a ghost. A quiet voice you try to silence. I rode to her house the next morning, before the sun had the strength to climb above the pines, stayed off the road, kept to the brush. I watched from the edge of the trees like a wolf watching its own fate, and I saw her standing at her window, her hand pressed to the glass. Our eyes met just for a moment, but it was enough. She wasn't crying, she wasn't screaming, she was waiting, and I knew then I wasn't leaving her behind, even if it meant death, even if it meant dragging every secret out of the canyon and into the open light of day. Because sometimes love doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for the right time. It just is. Fierce. Defiant. Unrelenting. The kind of love that carves itself into your bones. The kind you carry even when it's killing you. If you had one chance to save the person you love, would you risk everything, even your name, your people, your life? That morning, I didn't pray. Not to the spirits, not to the land. I'd long stopped asking the world for mercy. But I did speak her name, once, softly, as if the canyon could carry it to her, hold her until I could. I left my horse behind and moved on foot, through the wash, across the old creek bed, under the shadow of boulders scorched black by fire seasons past. I knew the land like I knew the shape of her hands, every line, every curve. And I needed that knowledge now, because what I was doing, it wasn't a plan. It was a calling, a madness that love had etched into my marrow. Sheriff Whitlock had posted 2 guards outside the house, young men with rifles too big for their shoulders and too much pride for their age. They didn't see me. They didn't hear me, but they should have, because I passed them like smoke in the wind, quiet and unseen. My mother taught me how to move like that long before the war, long before the fire took her. The back of the house opened into a small herb garden, overgrown, forgotten. But I remembered it from the stories Eleanor told me. That was where she learned to press lavender oil, where her mother taught her the language of flowers. I crept to the cellar doors and slipped inside. Darkness swallowed me, but even in that pitch black, I could feel her presence like a heartbeat echoing in my ribs. She was in the attic, locked away like a secret. I found her by candlelight, pale, eyes hollow but burning. "Kai," she breathed, and I held her, tight, fierce, as if that moment could rewrite time itself. "I'm getting you out," I said. "You'll die if they catch you." "Then I'll die." She shook her head, tears brimming but refusing to fall. "My father knows everything. He read my journal, the sketches, the notes. He said you bewitched me. Said you poisoned my mind." I stared at her, stunned. "Does he think I'm the devil?" "No," she whispered. "He thinks I'm worse. For loving you, I should have laughed. I didn't. Because hate like that, it doesn't bend. It breaks. And sometimes it burns the world around it just to keep its pride warm." We slipped from the attic like ghosts, my hand in hers. Down the servants' stairs past rooms that smelled like old dust and anger. The front parlor glowed with lantern light. The sheriff sat there, silent, a rifle resting across his knees, staring at the fireplace like it had answers. We nearly made it to the back door. Nearly. He heard the floorboard creak, and the next moment, Eleanor, her name, like thunder. We froze. She turned first. Brave, stupid girl. "I'm leaving, Papa." He stood slow, like a bear waking from winter. "No, you're not." "I love him." The words cracked in the room like a whip. He looked at me then. For the first time, truly looked. Not as a savage, not as a criminal, but as the man who dared love his daughter. "I should kill you where you stand," he growled. "I won't stop you," I said. She reached for me, trembling. "Kai." "But if you do," I said, locking eyes with him, "you'll lose her too." That was the moment, the war in his chest. I saw it, all of it, the father, the sheriff, the man. They all pulled at him from different corners of his soul, and in the end the badge won. He raised the rifle, the shot fired, but it didn't hit me. It hit the wall behind my head as we dove through the back door. We ran, through the garden, across the wash, into the teeth of the canyon. Shots rang out behind us, men shouting, dogs barking, the fire of pursuit lighting the night like a curse. But we didn't stop, because when you're running with the person you'd give your life for, fear becomes a whisper, and love becomes your only law. If everything you love is hunted, do you hide from the world, or do you stand and face it? I ask myself that often, not because I don't know the answer, but because it still hurts to remember the one I made. We ran for 2 days. No rest, no fire, no food, just the sound of our breath and the pounding of hooves somewhere far behind us. The canyon gave us shelter, but only just. I knew its curves, its hidden paths, the tight ledges that twisted like snakes through stone. I kept Eleanor close, 1 step behind me, her boots slipping on gravel she wasn't born to walk. But she never complained, not once. Her dress tore at the hem. Her hands bled from gripping the rock, but she kept going. I remember the way she looked on the second night, crouched beneath an overhang as rain began to fall. Her red hair clung to her cheeks, her lips cracked from the dry wind. And yet, she still looked at me like I was the only solid thing left in the world. Like she trusted me more than the ground beneath her feet. That trust was a weight, a gift, and a curse. We knew we couldn't run forever. I had friends deeper in Apache land, old allies who might hide us, help us vanish. But to reach them, we had to cross the ridge that marked the edge of the canyon. And between us and that freedom stood the posse, her father, men with guns and names and the law stitched into their coats like it meant something holy. Eleanor begged me not to fight. If they find us, let me talk to him, she whispered. Maybe he'll listen. Maybe he'll see. But men like Whitlock don't listen. They look. They judge. And then they destroy what they can't control. Still, I nodded, because I loved her. Because I wanted to believe she could bend the world with nothing more than the strength of her hope. We didn't make it to the ridge. They found us at dawn, 6 riders, all silent, faces like stone. Her father in the lead, his rifle already drawn. Eleanor stepped in front of me before I could raise a hand. "Papa, please." "You come with me now," he said, voice cold as the mountain air, and he walks away. "No," she said, trembling. "I won't leave him." His eyes burned holes through her. "You think this is love? What you've done? You've shamed our name, our family. Do you even know what people are saying?" "I don't care," she said, tears streaming now, but she didn't step back. "Let them talk. Let them rot in their pride. He's more honorable than any man I've ever known." Then he looked at me, and I saw it, the thing that would not yield, not to reason, not to pleading. He raised the rifle, and time became something strange, slow, weighted. I shoved Eleanor behind me just as the shot cracked through the canyon walls. It missed, barely, and suddenly I was moving, not thinking. My knife was in my hand. I could hear Eleanor screaming. Hooves thundered. Shouts echoed like gunfire. I didn't aim to kill, just to escape. I slashed at a horse's flank, sent one rider tumbling, threw dust in another's eyes, grabbed her hand and ran. But the sheriff, he wouldn't be denied. He came after us himself, and I knew then. One of us wasn't leaving this canyon. We reached the edge of the high bluff. Nowhere left to run. I turned to face him, knife still in my hand. He dismounted, slow, steady, eyes locked on mine. "Let her go," he said. "No." He stepped closer. "You'll die here. Then I'll die standing." His eyes flicked to Eleanor, who stood behind me, clutching my arm, shaking. "You don't belong together," he said, almost pleading. "You'll never have peace." I looked at her, and she looked back, fierce, through the fear. "We already have," I said. "You just never saw it." The sheriff raised his gun again, and then Eleanor stepped between us. "No more," she said, voice breaking. "If you want to shoot him, you'll have to shoot me too." Silence. Pure, heavy, final, and in that silence something cracked. Not the canyon, but the man, her father. He lowered the rifle, just an inch, but it was enough to let us breathe again. enough to buy us one last night under the stars. But I knew the truth. This wasn't over. Love had bought us time, but the world still wanted blood. If you had to live with a choice that tore your soul in two, would you still call it love? Some say love is a gift, but I've come to believe it's a burden, too. The kind you carry long after the fire's gone out, long after the hands you once held are dust and memory. After the standoff on the bluff, we didn't speak for a long while. Eleanor and I rode in silence through the narrowing canyon, our hearts pounding in the quiet. I could still feel her father's eyes on my back, even though we'd left him behind. He hadn't pulled the trigger, but he hadn't lowered it completely either. Men like that don't surrender. They just reload in the dark. We made it to the high desert by dusk. A friend of mine, Tomas, lived near the border, in a hidden camp tucked into a grove of mesquite trees. Apache and Mexican blood ran through his veins, and loyalty ran deeper than law. He welcomed us in silence, looked me in the eye and said only, "You look like a man who's already paid." Eleanor slept for almost a day. I watched her from the doorway of the hut, listening to the wind shift through the brush, wondering how long we could stay hidden before the world came knocking again. She looked so peaceful there, so young, as if all the weight we'd carried had finally fallen away in sleep. But I couldn't rest, because I knew peace wasn't a place. It was a lie we told ourselves when the pain went quiet. Tomas pulled me aside that evening. "You got maybe 3 days before someone comes asking," he said. "Your face is known, hers too. What if we keep running?" He shook his head. "You can't outrun a name, not in this country." I sat on a rock that night, watching the sun bleed out across the horizon, and I asked myself that damn question again. If I had to choose between honor and love, which would I choose? I thought back to my mother's teachings, how she'd spoken of the ancestors, of walking with dignity even when the world turns its back on you, of keeping your spirit clean even in blood. I thought of my people, those still fighting, still hiding, still scraping through dirt and grief, trying to hold on to what little was left. And then I thought of Eleanor, of the way she looked at the world like it was something she could paint into something better, of the way she said my name like it was worth something. I knew I couldn't have both, not in this life. The next morning I packed a small satchel, water, dried meat, a flint stone, my knife. Eleanor woke to find me standing by the doorway. "Where are you going?" she asked, eyes still heavy with sleep. "I have to draw them away," I said. "If I go alone, they'll stop looking. You can stay here, safe." Her face crumpled. "No, no, Kai, please." I held her shoulders, gentle but firm. "If we keep running, one day they'll catch us, and they won't be merciful. Not with you, not with me. I don't care, I'll die with you. I won't let you." She fell into my chest then, sobbing like I'd never seen, and I held her as the morning light crept over the desert floor, turning everything gold and cruel. "This isn't goodbye," I whispered. "This is the only way I can love you and still be a man my mother would recognize." She didn't say anything, just pressed the necklace I'd given her against my palm. "Then take this," she said, "so you won't forget me." I kissed her once, long, final, like I was sealing something sacred into her soul. And then I walked away, never turned back. Because if I did, I never would have left. They say the canyon still echoes with whispers at night. Lovers, ghosts, things left unsaid. Maybe that's true, or maybe it's just the sound of a man's heart breaking across time. Either way, I still hear her voice in the wind sometimes, and I still ask myself, as the fire dies low? Was it love? If I lost everything to keep it pure?